Okay, and we are live. Hi, everyone. Hi, Pauline. Hi, Minimalist Finance. Hi, Judy. Hello, everyone. So good to see you. Hi, Marwan. Okay. Hey, Rosalinda. Great to see you all. So today I want to talk a little bit about storytelling, how to find your stories. Let me just pin that real quick. So good to see everyone. Waiting, waiting for you in threads. Yeah, sorry. So sorry, I've been kind of quiet recently on social media and like emails and everything. It's because for the last 3 weeks, I've been like really, really trying to work on this next, um, like basically the curriculum for the next quarter, as well as all the new assignments and stuff like that. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. So if you have any questions for me about hey Luis, how we find stories, hey Mukades, hi Debbie, hi Ahmad, hey Tabitha, hey NSC Canvas. Yeah, so if you have any questions about like how to find stories, maybe like even how Night Owl Nation works, how we practice storytelling, any kind of questions like that, just go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll try to answer everything as much as I can. Hi, Linda. Hey, Sunita. Hi, Shuri. Okay, cool. So yeah, uh, so quickly, the way we do, I want to kind of first cover my bases on like what is storytelling and how storytelling works, right? So think about this, right? What's everybody talking about threads? What's threads? If you know what people are talking about, just put it in the put it in the chat. So basically, what happens is when we tell a story, um, what we're doing in life. Okay, so I want to start with like the purpose of a memory, right? So the reason why we have memories and we remember, you know how like you go back in your childhood and there are certain memories you have, like certain things that you remember vividly in your in your head. Oh, so it's like Twitter. Okay, Meta's version of Twitter. Okay, got it. So it goes like so you're living your life, you know, you're going about your day, and then shit hits the fan, something happens, right? And Thread is like Instagram on Twitter. Okay, cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. And then it when some so let's say you thought you were gonna let's say you thought you were gonna get a job. You applied for a job, you did an interview. Hey Sarah, and you thought you were gonna get a job, but you didn't get the job. So it failed, right? And you were like, oh shit, what happened? Right? And right when that happens, that experience is like now it's a memory in your head, right? It's like whether it's in your head, in your body, you remember that, right? But what most people do is they don't learn from what happened and they repeat that mistake again. So then next time you go to interview, same thing. You don't get the job. You don't get the job. Or maybe like a sales sales meeting, right? And you don't get the job or you don't get the job. Okay. There's you can conversation threads going about topic and you can post carousels. Oh, cool. I'm gonna have to definitely check that out. So you don't get the job, and people repeat this pattern over and over and over again. And what usually happens is, you know, when people ask me like, "Son, how do you come up with all these ideas? How do you come up with all these ideas for content and things like that?" Everything that I learned basically is looking at my history. So if you look back in your history, there are so many things that happen in your life where things like that happen. Something unexpected happened in your life, right? And from that unexpected thing, right? Something that threw you off, something that something that surprised you. most of us, we don't learn our lesson from them. We don't go back, we don't reflect in our past, and we're like, oh, what did I do wrong here? And what could I have done better? And so we stuck in this loop, stuck in this loop, stuck in this loop, and we're just keep making the same mistake over and over and over and over and over again. But just by kind of stopping and going back and looking at the mistakes that we made and trying to figure out, even tell like a detailed story about it. This happened and this happened, and then maybe get other people's feedback or something like that. What happens is some sort of a story is gonna appear where you're like, aha, okay, that's what I did wrong. So that next time you get out of that loop and you can do better. You can do something different, right? And through this life experience, like for example, you know, I'm riding a bike and I every time I slow down, I fall down, right? And then so you learn from that. So next time you know not to slow down, you go a little bit faster, you go a little bit faster, and then you learn and learn it. So next time you can tell that, you can share that story with somebody else so that they don't have to go through the same mistakes that you made, right? And that's kind of what a storytelling is. So at the basis of at Night Owl Nation, what we're doing is we're going back in our history, back in our past, and reflecting on some of these old stories that we have from the past where we made mistakes, where we did something wrong, and we're trying to figure out how to do better. And then we're trying to teach other people through those lessons how to do better. Okay, it looks like there's some questions, so I'm going to go through them. Okay, Jonathan asks, not asking questions, just jump to threads, and we're looking forward to your midtrip. Okay, I'll go. Hi, Kay. I'll go on threads. Seems like a lot of people want me to go on threads. Damn, I just got on Twitter, so I guess I'm going now. I have to tweet, and I have to go on threads too. What's the next way to create your brand story? What's the best way to create your brand story? So I personally think that your brand story should not be a hero's journey story. So if your hero's journey story, in my opinion, should be like your sales page story, right? So if you go in your sales page, you're trying to, especially if you're like a coach, you're selling information products. What you're trying to do is, at the end of the day, when you're selling, what you're doing is teaching, because what you're trying to do is the customer, or the audience, they don't know what you know, because if they knew what you knew, they would buy from you. But because they don't know what you know, that's why they're not buying from you, right? So when you're selling, basically what you're trying to teach, and you're trying to teach them what you know, like they're over here, they're this is the old you where you used to be. Now you know better, right? Now you're here, and something happened in between, right? So this, you used to be like this, and then something happened in between, and now you're like this. So for example, one of the things that I used to do all the time is, you know, when you go to job interview, right? And or you go to like when I go into a sales meeting or something like that, I used to always try to sell myself, like talk about me, tell myself, right? But then what I realized over time is, when I was interviewing people or when I went to a sales meeting, right? And for example, when I was looking for a freelancer for one of my clients, like a copywriter, and we went there and we wanted to like hire a copywriter to do a certain kind of work. And this copywriter kept talking and talking and talking about himself, right? It's like, oh, I did this, I did that, and I won this award, and blah, 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 blah. Like, it almost seemed like he didn't give a shit about us. It almost felt like we were trying to tell him what our problem is, or what we need, what solution we need at that time. But it was almost like he wasn't even hearing us. He just wanted to talk about himself, right? He was like selling himself over, and he was just trying to impress us the whole time, right? And it felt like I felt so disconnected that it didn't even seem like he really cared about us. All it seemed like was he just cared about himself, right? So that's kind of like when I realized that, okay, if you really want to sell, selling is not about selling yourself, talking about yourself, trying to impress the client. That's not what selling is. Selling is asking a lot of questions to the client, asking a lot of right questions to the client, and selling is mostly about listening. Selling is about listening and really getting in touch with what the client wants. What is it? What is the struggle that he has? And then see how I can help them solve that struggle, right? So if you're not listening and if you're not asking a lot of questions, so this is what I realized. And if you go on a date, right, or if you go into a sales meeting or something like that, the person, like, if you don't talk at all and if you let the other person talk all the time, like, whoever is talking a lot is gonna be the one that walks away the happiest, right? Like, most people love talking. Like, most people love talking more than listening. Okay. So, and especially when they're talking about themselves, like there is nothing that sounds sweeter than the sound of your own voice. So people love to talk about themselves. So one of the things I learned is that when you're in a sales meeting, you shouldn't talk about yourself, but you should talk about the client, and you should talk about, you should let that person talk about themselves, right? So once I learned that lesson, now, so the old me is like this, me talk, 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 and the new me is like, oh, I should listen, 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 right? So there's the old me and there's the new me. Now the story is, basically how I came to learn that. And in your sales page, sales message, that's what it should be. Your sales message, your sales page should talk about your hero's journey story of how you went from here to here. And because I've done that, I can help you in the same way, right? I think your brand story should should actually talk about you, right? Like, the whole story brand where, the customer is the hero and you're the guy, that thing. That's actually for the sales page. If you want to talk about your brand story and what makes you special, I think you should talk about you. But the way you should do it, so we kind of did this, and if you go to markrandolph.com, so Mark Randolph is one of our clients, and if you go to his about page, we did kind of a similar thing here. What you should talk about is your personality and why my personality is the best for you, right? So, for example, when somebody comes to my agency, because of my personality, I always go over deliver. I'm always like going over and beyond, and I'm always trying to do the best work. So a lot of times in doing so, we miss deadlines. Like our projects are longer than usual, and our pricing is way higher than most, right? So that is our weakness. So what I do is I start talking about my weakness, and I talk about how my weakness became my biggest strength, right? Because if you think about what your weakness is, most of the time your weakness is going to be also your biggest strength, right? For example, um I'm the type of, like, if you're a people pleaser, people are like, oh, don't be a people pleaser, right? But no, if you're a people pleaser, that's actually your strength. Your ability to go people please and go over and beyond and deliver an amazing service is what's going to differentiate you from everybody else, because all the other people out there are not people pleasers. They don't give a shit about the client. They don't give a shit about, like, going over and beyond for the client. So if you're the one who's going over and beyond for the client, then that's your strength, right? So your weakness is your strength. So, for example, for me, here's another one. People say, like, oh, don't be a perfectionist, right? Perfectionism is the enemy of progress or something like that, right? Yes, that is true. So you should have some sort of process where your perfectionism doesn't get out of control. But also your perfectionism is your strength. Your weakness is your strength, right? Like, Steve Jobs was a perfectionist, right? And that's his weakness. And he needs to make sure that he has business people around and other operators around to make sure that he doesn't, his perfectionism doesn't go out of hand. But at the end of the day, what made Apple special, like the reason why Apple is amazing, is because of Steve Jobs' perfectionism. Like, that's their whole brand. Do you know what I mean? So imagine Steve Jobs was like, oh, I don't want to be a perfectionism. What am I gonna do? Like, then it's not gonna, Apple is not gonna be Apple. Yeah, next quarter hasn't started yet. So next quarter of Night Owl Nation starts this Sunday. And for the next 11 weeks, I have brand new assignments. I have brand new exercises that I created. These are like storytelling exercises that I created that's going to help you practice storytelling. So for example, one of the exercises like um, whether you watch a movie, YouTube video, or listen to a podcast or something like that, and try to find if there's a story in that movie or a situation in that video or something like that that you can relate to from your own life. And if you can, then just go back in your own life and try to retell that your version of that same story, right? And see where it leads to. So something like that. So that's one of the exercises. But I have 11 exercises like this for the next 11 weeks. And within Night Owl Nation, what happens is every week you're gonna do this storytelling exercise. You're gonna, write it down, share it, and then from the community, like there are, more advanced storytellers in our community. There are beginners in our community, but from the community, you're gonna get feedback, and you're gonna, you're gonna be share. They're gonna be sharing their kind of feedback on your story, and that's gonna help you improve your storytelling. See what you did. They can also guide you through what you're doing wrong if you're doing something wrong, because some of the members in our community, like some of the core members in our community, has been with us for like a year now, over a year. So they've been practicing storytelling for a year, so they can really help you with your storytelling. All right, let's go to the next question. I just answered that one. The drawing bar. Can you find your stories and refine your services along with your clients? Can you find your stories and refine your services along with clients? Yeah. So, you know what? I think this is what you're asking. This is what I would do. There are people that are at all different business levels, right? So if you're just starting out in your business and, this is like your first year or two, I wouldn't focus so much on finding your perfect brand message, your perfect differentiator, your perfect brand story. I wouldn't focus so much on that. What I would do is I would just try to be present and just passionately work on everything that you're going to work on with your clients or building your product, and just, listen to your audience and listen to your customers. Anna Maria, can you put that question on the thread, on the question sticker? But I mean, the short answer to that question, Anna Maria, is that yes, you can. Like Steve Jobs is the Steve Jobs' brand story is Apple's story. Like Jeff Bezos' story is Amazon's story. So Elon Musk's story is Tesla's story. So it does work like that. Like the founder story is gonna resonate through. The best example I can give is Disney, right? Like like Walt Disney and Disney. Okay, but going back to Drawing Bard's question. Yeah, so if you're starting out, what I would recommend is constantly talk to your audience. Like right now, because I've been putting out so much content for a long time, I've been, and I'm reading my comments. I'm engaging in the comments. I'm replying to the comments. I'm replying to the DMs, and just through the conversation alone, what you're gonna realize, hey Mo, what you're gonna realize is you're gonna realize who your audience is. Like here's a good example. So few weeks ago, we did this exercise in Night Owl Nation called Weaknesses and Strength. And everybody started sharing their weaknesses. I said, what's a weakness that everybody around you tells you about, right? And everyone started sharing their weaknesses. And what I realized is, most people in Night Owl Nation, we share similar personality. Everyone, a lot of people have, like, a lot of us are overthinkers, a lot of us are perfectionists, a lot of us are people pleasers. There's a lot of similar characteristics that we share in the community. And so what ends up happening is the more you talk to your audience, the more let's say you put out a product, like you teach a course, or you put out a product, or you put out a piece of content, and you get feedback from your audience, and you kind of ask them questions and see where they're struggling with. The more you do that, the more you're going to realize what your brand is, right? So, so many people are come to me and say, "Son, like, I never thought of it that way," is such a perfect brand message for you, right? Like every time I'm taking a class from you, or I'm listening to your content, I'm always saying, "I never thought of it that way." So that's like a perfect line for you. Now, if you told me like 3 years ago or 5 years ago, if you told me to come up with that tagline on my own, I would have never ever been able to do it. Hi Jennifer, hi Liana. I would have never been able to come up with that ever. But the how I came up with that tagline, how I came up with that basic message is people on my Instagram kept commenting, "I never thought of it that way." And I kept seeing, "I never thought of it that way," over and over and over. So I decided to make that my tagline. So that's like a good example of why you shouldn't try to make up, you shouldn't try to come up with some brand message that you think is right. There's no fucking way in hell that you're gonna know what your brand message is. Like, your brand message is what your customer. Here's okay. So here's another thing, right? When I ask people like, "Oh, what's your weakness and strength?" People, a lot of people are telling me like, "Oh, my weakness is that I'm too whatever it is," right? And a lot of times when I keep talking to them, it turns out that that's not their real weakness. That's what they think is their weakness. But usually, what you think you are, who you think you are, is not really who you are. That's just like what you want to be. Like, just because you want to be that doesn't mean that's who you are. Most likely, who you really are is where other people say you are. Okay. And that's exactly what a brand is, right? Brand is not what you say you are, it's what other people say you are, right? So, somebody can go around saying, "Oh, I'm the most honest person in the world. I'm so honest. I always tell the truth." Like, but if nobody else says it, that means it just feels fake, right? Or if that's why like most corporate brand messages feel so fake, because they, on one end, they're like, "Oh, I care so much about, we care about people and we care about this," but behind the scenes their actions don't show that, right? So yeah, your brand isn't what you say you are, it's what other people say you are. So that's why you have to find your stories, and you have to define your brand over time with your customers, with your audience, by listening to them and things like that. Okay. Masalas girl. Hey. So Hero's Journey is your sales page. What do you like to see for your brand story? Yeah. So just like I said, your brand story, I think, should be how your weakness became your strength. So for example, for me, like, I always thought that you know, I was always so naive. My mom used to always tell me, "Son, you're so gullible. You're so naive, son. Like, son, you're like, you trust people too much. Like, people are always taking advantage of you." And that was true. When I was young, people were always taking advantage of me because I didn't really care about money, right? I didn't really care about like, for example, when I was young, my dad paid me and my sister $10 to wash the car. And after we washed the car, we spent like 2 hours washing the car. And after that, we took the $10 that he gave us and we went to buy air freshener for the car. So we had basically ended up washing the car for free, right? But that's because like I care so much about, doing a good job on washing that car and making that car perfect, that I didn't care about the $10, right? And the same thing happened like when I was freelancing, my first project, like, I lost so much money because it took me 9 months to build the first website I built for a client. It took me 9 months to build that website, and we got paid less than $2,000. So I lost so much money on like on their first project. But because on those first few projects I lost money, but I went overboard on those projects, that portfolio ended up getting us more clients later on, right? Things like that. So what happened was, the thing that I thought was my biggest weakness actually turned out to be my biggest strength, because I kept going overboard on. And same thing, well, on the next client, when we started working with Gabby Bernstein, like, we really went over and beyond on that project. And what ended up happening was that project won all these awards. That project got featured on all these like blogs that says like top 10 personal brand websites and all of that. And then all the other personal brands wanted to come work with us. Same thing with Jay Shetty. When we worked with Jay Shetty, we went over and beyond. Like that was also not a profitable project, but because we went over and beyond, everyone who sees Jay Shetty's website are like, "Hey, can you make a website for me like Jay Shetty?" Like that attracted more clients, and so on and so on and so on. So my weakness actually turned out to be my biggest strength. So that's kind of what I think. That should be your brand story. Your brand stories should be about how your weakness ended up becoming your biggest strength. Why? Because that if you talk about it like that, where you include the weakness and the strength, what ends up happening is people are going to be like, holy shit, I really resonate with that. I know people like that, right? So because that's your personality, so what you're doing is you're selling your differentiator. That's what makes you, your personality is what makes you different from everyone else, right? So that's why you should talk about your weakness and strength. So another thing I do when clients come to us is right off front, like literally even before we meet with them, we tell them that we're going to be probably the most expensive proposal you get, right? So that's our weakness. Though our weakness is that we're going to be expensive, but we tell them that up front, because we say we can't start your project for the next 3 months. We're going to be the most expensive, but when we're done, you're going to have the best website, right? So people actually believe us because we're telling them we're being honest about our weaknesses as well as our strength, right? But if I end up saying like, oh, like every other agency, right? We're gonna be under budget, we're gonna be on time, and we're gonna have the best quality. Like nobody's gonna believe you. Nobody believes you. It's kind of like when it's too good to be true, nobody believes you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So your take on Threads. I literally just found out about Threads. Sorry guys. So I've been so busy literally for the last 3 weeks. I've been sitting in this room right here every single day, like 18 hours a day, working on the next Night Owl Nation curriculum, assignments, exercises, and things like that. So, and I'm so proud of this next quarter because it's literally going to be the best quarter we've ever had in Night Owl Nation. So if you really, really want to up-level your storytelling, and if you want to practice storytelling, there's going to be literally no place in the world where you can learn storytelling better than Night Owl Nation this next quarter, because I basically spent the entire last year keep teaching storytelling for the last year live in our community, and keep getting feedback from everyone. Like we're literally working around the clock to design this curriculum. And then for the past 3 weeks, I've been gathering all of that data and putting and trying to come up with the best curriculum possible. So I honestly think if you want to learn storytelling, like personal storytelling or business storytelling, I can proudly say there's no other course, no other program in the world. I don't give a fuck about Masterclass. I don't give a fuck about StoryBrand. I don't give a fuck about any of the storytelling courses. There's no fucking place in the world that's going to be better than Night Owl Nation if you want to learn storytelling. And I can stand by that, and I can fucking guarantee that shit. That's how strongly I feel, and and you guys know that I never ever sell. Like, when do you ever see me like promoting how go join my webinar and go join? Like, I never do that. Or I don't try to like trick you into getting into a funnel and then upsell you. I don't do any of that, right? When I'm trying to sell you something, or when I'm trying to promote Night Owl Nation, it's because I know that you need it. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for you. Because you are gonna lose out if you don't join Night Owl Nation. So that's not me trying. I don't give a fuck if you buy Night Owl Nation or not. Like, the $180 that you pay me is not gonna change my life. The reason why I'm telling you is because you need it, and I want you to know what you're missing out on, and that's why I'm promoting Night Owl Nation. So yeah, definitely, if you want to learn storytelling, there's no better place. Go to Night Owl Nation in my link in bio and then register, because it's starting this Sunday. Okay. But anyway, yeah. On the threads, I'll definitely check it out today, and then I'm gonna be like, once we get kickoff Night Owl Nation, get it going, I'm gonna be back on social media. I'm gonna be putting out content again. So definitely join and check out I'll check out the threads and I'll let you guys know. But I guess if it's like Twitter, I guess I'll start using it like Twitter. Okay, scale up with Monica. How to curate stories. If I feel like I don't have much experience, as I am not an extrovert, what is your suggestion for someone like me who wants to curate or include storytelling, but because lack of experience, I feel somewhat stuck in story? So you know what? That's kind of like the number one thing people say when I start working with when I start working with clients, right? Personal brand clients, and we're doing their brand storytelling and things like that. And even at Night Owl Nation, when students join, everybody says like, "Oh, I don't have any stories. I don't have any stories. My life is not that interesting," or something like that, right? But right after like the first week or two, everybody starts going like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I have so many stories," right? If you look at like the testimonials like from the people in Night Owl Nation, people are so when we start storytelling at Night Owl Nation, people are shocked at how many stories they actually have, because you do have story. Every single one of you have stories, because you all live lives and stories, shit happens in your life all the time. So what ends up happening is, like, you've had ups and downs in your life, right? You had happy moments, sad moments, angry moments, like all of this emotional roller coaster. Obviously you did, and all of those moments are stories. So one of the first exercises that we do at Night Owl Nation is we go back and we block out different periods in your life, right? So your childhood, and then now your middle school, like your junior high and high school period, and then your college days, and then your first job, and then like in your 20s, and then your 30s, and we block out different periods in your life, and we go back and we try to write down, find all the vivid memories of we have from that period. And after we do that, we dig in and we try to analyze each story. And also, what I saw is this: people who say, "Oh, I don't have story, I don't have any story to tell," all of a sudden, when in Night Owl Nation, when they start hearing other people's stories, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I do have a story. I like that happened to me too. Oh yeah, that remind me of this. Oh, this remind me of this." And trust me, you're gonna have so many stories that finding story is gonna be the least of your problems. Uh, you know, Within Night Owl Nation, actually finding what story to tell is actually the least of our problems. The biggest problem is more on how can we dig in and find the lesson of that story, or really like getting vulnerable with that story, or something like that, or analyzing that story. Something like that is going to be a bigger challenge than actually finding stories. And also, same thing with curating stories, right? You're going to be able to see, like, whenever you talk to somebody, whenever you talk to your clients or something like that, you're going to be able to easily detect like what stories they have through the same experience. Okay. Marcellus girl, do you think culture, ethnicity, specific brand can do you think culture specific brands can work? Example, staying connected to your culture, living in another country. Yeah, I think it can work, right? Because for example, um like I'm Korean and I live in the US. So so if my content and everything, what I'm talking about, like me being Korean and like my experience as a Korean and um living in the US, there's gonna be other people who are gonna resonate with that, right? So again, here's what I want to say. Your brand message, your brand story and things like that, it's not something that you say. Like, okay, all of you, every single one of you already have a brand. Okay? Every single one of you already have a brand. And that brand is what the people that you know say about you. What your mom says about you, what your dad says about you, what your brother and sister say about you, what your best friends say about you. That's already your brand, right? The only difference is that are you gonna take that and make it public, or are you just gonna keep it amongst your friends and family? That's the only difference, right? So yesterday I was recording my podcast with or 2 days ago I was yesterday I was recording my podcast with one of the guests, and she was talking about like you know what topic should I talk about and things like that. And she said that she wants to talk about like education in and how like how she wants to raise her her kid, her child, and what kind of education she wants to give her. And I said, if that's what it is, that's what you should talk about, because you're probably already asking people about that because you're interested, you're curious for your own selfish reasons, what you want to like, all the information you want to know for your child's education, right? So like if you are curious about ethnicity and like culture, like for example like the Indian culture in the United States or something like that, then you should, if that's what you're personally interested in, that's what you should talk about. If you have guests on, that's what you should discuss. And whatever you're personally interested in already, doing it publicly, that becomes your brand. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, don't try to separate yourself from the brand. Whatever you already love talking about, like, why don't you actually, for every single one of you guys, why don't you try this? Go to your best friend, go to your mom, go to your dad, go to your family, and ask them like, what's the thing that you constantly talk about that you won't shut up about? Like, do you understand what I mean? Like, what's that thing that you just won't shut up about? Like, where people are like, okay, stop, like, stop talking about that shit. Like, I don't care. Like, the thing that you talk about so much that you annoy people, right? That's most likely going to be your brand, because you're you're not even trying to make that your brand. You're constantly talking about it already. So whatever you're excited about is most likely going to be the thing that you talk about. So yeah, double down on that. uh Oneshan 17, how do you gain the confidence to share your story to a client you've never met before? So the thing is, confidence comes from, okay, so confidence starts with courage and it turns into confidence, right? So for example, the first time I was sharing like a personal story, I was scared shitless, right? So most likely the first time you do it, you're gonna need a lot of courage to do it, right? And what happens is, and I see a lot of people do this too. Like the first time they post on Instagram or on social media or something like that, they're really scared to post, or scared. But then what happens is, the first time you do it, a lot of your fear is going to be debunked. Okay. Maybe you're like, I say something and the client's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Or maybe you thought that once I say this, everybody's gonna hate me or everyone's gonna judge me or something like that, right? Everyone's gonna make fun of me. But nobody does. If they don't make fun of you, if they're actually impressed, then your confidence is gonna go up a little bit, right? And then you do it again, and then it's gonna go up a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. So that I think that's kind of the thing about confidence is that people say just be confident. Just don't care about what other people think. Just be confident, right? No, you can't. That's like saying if somebody's like, let's say somebody's like somebody's afraid of height. Somebody's like, let's say claustrophobic or whatever like phobia you have or whatever fear that you have. Imagine somebody has a fear of height and you just throw him in an airplane and throw him like put him in a parachute and like throw him off the plane, right? Imagine somebody has like claustrophobia and you just throw him in an elevator and then just lock the door, right? What's going to happen? That person is going to go crazy, right? So the thing is, you can't just jump in and be confident. That's not how confidence works. In the beginning, you need a little bit of courage to try the thing, to take the first step, right? So you're going to tell your story for the first time and you're going to be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then you're going to do it again and again and again. And over time, like just like your muscle, you're going to work that muscle. You're going to work your vulnerability muscle. And it gets easier and easier and easier. But what makes it easier is the fact that right now, this is how I feel. Most of the people that are kind of like wearing a mask or like kind of faking it till you make it or not really being fully authentic or vulnerable on social media or something like that. I think that the reason why that's happening is because you have a fear that once you do really show your true self, that people are going to judge you. Like something bad is going to happen, right? But then when you actually do it and nothing bad happens, you're going to like feel so much better. And it's going to give you the confidence to do it again. And it's going to give you the confidence to do it again and again and again and again. And what's going to really, really free you is that nobody gives a shit. Like, here's the thing. As much as like you guys are here watching this Instagram live, as much as like I send out those emails, I post and people like my content and people comment on my content, as much as people, like interact with my content, at the end of the day, I know that you guys don't give a shit about me, right? I know that at the end of the day, if I die tomorrow, you'll get over it. Like I know that, and that's ultimately going to give you the confidence. Once you realize that no matter how much they praise you, at the end of the day, they don't give a shit. No matter how much they judge you, at the end of the day, they don't give a shit. At the end of the day, no one in the world gives a shit about you except your mom, maybe except your dad and your loved ones. But other than that, nobody gives a shit about you. And once you realize that, then you're going to have the confidence to say whatever you want to say. So I know that's like kind of harsh to hear, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Think about the celebrity that you love the most, right? Think about like like imagine like the celebrity that you admire died tomorrow, right? Like I guarantee you within a week you're going to move on with your life. It's not going to affect you that much. You're not really going to care, right? So yes, that's sad, but at the same time, how freeing is that? How freeing is that nobody actually cares about you enough to judge you? Okay, next question. Who it's Huzai Design. How to recover from past trauma. Okay, so I'm not like a therapist or a psychiatrist, so I don't know what that means. But so I don't know how that actually works. But here's what I can say, right? Like for me, there are certain things that happen in my life that is like a it is like a vivid memory in my mind, right? It's a traumatic memory or something like that. But what ends up happening is when you go back in your history and you tell that story in detail, when I tell that story in detail and work it all out, what ends up happening is it becomes crystal clear to me that that story doesn't apply to me anymore. For example, like one of the things that I do is, when I was young, I got in trouble for picking like a more expensive shirt versus a cheaper shirt, right? Or I in my mind, I thought I got in trouble for that, but then later on, it turned out to be false anyway. But in my mind, I made up this story that if I pick the more expensive stuff, that I'm gonna get punished, that I have to always be trying to save money, right? And that childhood memory is stuck in my mind, my body, and that memory is like very present within me. So that even when I grew up, when I made money and I could afford all this stuff, I always pick the cheapest one. I go to the store, I always pick the cheapest one, cheapest brand, cheapest anything, right? And that's because that memory is kind of like embedded in me, right? But once I went back and I told that story in detail, and I figure out, like, once you realize that's just the story, that's just that thing that happened when I was young doesn't apply anymore in my life anymore. Once that becomes crystal clear, then that story doesn't affect you anymore. That story cannot bother you anymore. Something like that. So the way you can recover from past traumas is by going back and reliving that trauma, and by working that trauma. Because, okay, here's actually a explanation that I heard from a psychiatrist. So what happens is, the purpose of your memory is so that you can remember something that happened, something that bad happened, some tragedy that happened. And then through your memory, your brain is smart enough to retain that memory so that you won't do it again in the future, right? And that's what trauma is. When you have some sort of a past trauma, your brain is remembering that so that it won't happen to you again, right? So what has to happen is, and it's because your brain hasn't worked through that story yet to make sense of it on how you can apply it in the future. But when you actually go back and you're just kind of like, and what you're doing is, when you're not going back to that moment and keep bringing it up, you're just kind of like pushing it on the rug and you're ignoring it. But if you actually go right into that moment and recall that memory and retell that story in detail and try to figure out exactly how it happened and how it doesn't apply in your life, or like work through that story, then your brain will literally let go of that trauma. It'll let go of that memory, because now you've made sense of it. You broke it down and you made sense of it, and you know how it can be applied to your future. So I would say, to recover from your past trauma, go back to that traumatic moment and retell that story in detail. But again, I'm not a psychiatrist, so that's just my personal opinion. Okay, I have a question from YouTube and LinkedIn, so I'm going to answer that. Okay, Liana asked, how can you appeal to an audience when your product itself is boring, but the whole story behind it is interesting? Nonprofit building record keeping software for undeserved clinics. Yeah, no, that's exactly how you do it. Because a lot of times your product itself is going to be boring. So what you have to do is, you have to talk about maybe like how that product helps somebody, like the story behind maybe your customers, right? Or story, like, it's kind of like what Charity Water does, right? Charity Water doesn't talk about the actual thing they do or the numbers or anything like that. What they do is they go into the life of the people that they're helping, or the life of the donor or something like that, and they tell a personal story about it. So that's how I would do it. Okay. Mukades, you talk about 3 stages of originality in Domestika course. Can you elaborate on that a little? Okay. 3 stages of originality in Domestika course. 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 3 stages of originality in Domes Okay. So I talk about three stages of authenticity, right? So I think in life we all go through this three stages of authenticity. And the first stage is, that's what I call like fake it till you make it stage. So when I was in high school, like I knew I was so fucking fake, and I knew I was fake. Like, because when I first came to America, I knew I was different, and I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be like other kids. So I would like really pay attention to how other people dress, how other people talk. So I try to mimic everything that other people do. Like if I like the way somebody talks, I'll try to talk like them. If I like the way this person dressed, I'll try to dress like them. So I knew I was fake, right? Like I knew that, like for example, in my high school, it was cool to carry your book like on your arm rather than like carrying it in a book bag. So I used to always just carry my book, like I put everything in my locker and then carry my book in my arm or something like that, right? So I would always try to mimic what the cool kids are doing because I wanted to be cool. Okay, so that is the first stages of authenticity. I know I'm being fake. I know I'm just faking it. And deep down inside, I know, right? And I'm actually constantly living under this pressure and this fear that I'm gonna get found out. Like people are gonna realize that I'm not cool. People are gonna like, or like something like you know, like let's say you kind of like fudged your resume a little bit and you made yourself sound better than you are, right? And throughout that whole career, like everybody's looking at you like you're this person, and you're constantly trying to live up to that person, and you're like kind of in living in fear that people are gonna find out, right? Like I see a lot of people actually do that. So that's fake it till you make it stage one. Stage two of authenticity is when you start hearing people say something like, "Oh, I don't care what people think. Oh, I don't give a shit what people say." Like, when you hear something like that, that's when you know that you're at the stage two of authenticity, right? Oh, something like, I don't mean to offend you, but I'm just being honest. And then they just like, they say whatever they want to say. So they almost use authenticity as an excuse to be an asshole. Okay. And they're constantly trying to prove to other people that I don't care. Oh, like all this people made fun of me, but I don't care. I don't care. Oh, like I know people are gonna judge me, but I don't care. Oh, if I wear this, I know that somebody's gonna make fun of me, but I don't care. Right? Whenever somebody's being like that, that's how you know that they're at the second stage of authenticity. That that's that means that you want your ego wants other people to think that you don't care. That means you care. You care because you care about what other people think of you, and you want them to think that you're authentic. You want them to think that you don't care. Do you understand what I mean? If you really don't care, you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't go around advertising, telling people that I don't care what you think, blah blah blah. You would just do you, right? So that's like the second stage of authenticity. You can usually tell by when people use words like, "Oh, I don't care what they say. Oh, I don't care what people think," or "I don't give a fuck. I don't give a shit," or something along that line, right? Now, the final stage of authenticity is when you care and you know that you are scared of being judged, and you know that if I say this, like this person might not like it or something like that, but you do it anyway. Like you you say the thing that you need to say, or you do the thing that you need to do, even though you are scared, even though you do care. Like, do you understand what I mean? So that's like the final stage of authenticity. And people that are like really authentic, that's how they are, right? Like, of course I care. When I post something on social media, and like I posted this one thing about like UI UX design, and all this UI UX designers started replying and be like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like this, like he's an idiot," and all of these things, right? I'm not gonna say I don't care, because I do care. That, like, when I see those comments, it does hurt me. It does trigger me, right? But it's not gonna stop me from saying what I need to say. Do you understand what I mean? So That's the final stages of authenticity. So that I think we need to go through all the first two stages before you get to the third stage. And you know what? Actually, from my experience, the people that are the most authentic, I realize that they don't even know that they're authentic. Like, I bet you, I bet you if you're the type of person that goes around and people are always telling you, like, oh, you're so honest, like you're so authentic, or you're so relatable, or something like that, most likely, and you have no idea why they're saying that, that's probably a good sign, because the 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 people that I meet that are the most authentic, actually they're clueless that they're authentic. They're just being them, and they're not even thinking about that. And Mukades, I would say you're probably one of those people. Okay. Himanshu, how do I choose a product or and start brand from scratch? Well, I wouldn't start a product first, right? So what needs to happen is, when you start a brand, when you start a business, like, the reason why a business exists is because you want to use this business is helping you solve a problem that's out in the world, right? So if you want to start a brand from scratch, like, just start putting out content, start talking about what you care about, start talking about what you think. Okay, here's a good place to start. If anybody's trying to start a new brand from scratch and you don't know what you want to do, you're clueless about what kind of brand you want to start, what product you want to build, think about this. What's something about the world that bothers you? I'll say it again. What's something about this world that bothers you, that you think is wrong about this world, that you think you can fix, right? So start there. What's something about this world that bothers you, and talk about it. Talk about that thing and try to figure out how you can solve that. So if you care about the environment and something bothers you, talk about that, right? If you care about, healthcare and something about healthcare that bothers you, talk about that. If you care about education and something about the education bothers you, talk about that, right? If you care about software, some sort of an app, like if Instagram bothers you, then talk about that, and maybe you can make a better Instagram, right? So whatever about this world that you think is wrong and bothers you, talk about that and try to solve that problem. And that's pretty much at the core what I'm doing, right? I think that the online education, like how the online education market works in our industry, like this education industry, bothers me, because I feel like people care more about marketing and selling rather than teaching, right? And I just don't think that I don't think that there's good storytelling courses out there. I don't think that there's enough, like, I don't think that there's a course that really teaches you how to do storytelling, how to critically think, how to dig up stories, things like that. And therefore, that's what I talk about. And therefore, that's why I started Night Owl Nation, because I want to fix that. So what is it about this world that bothers you? And fix that. And that can be your brand. Okay, last one. Share beauty. What if you're so complex that it's hard to zone in? I guess that actually, a lot of people feel this way these days, right? Like, because right now there's so many options, there's so many things you can do, that it's kind of hard to focus on one thing. But what I'll say is this: it's okay to be multi-passionate. It's okay to do a lot of different things, be interested in a lot of things, but pick one of them and make that your 80%. And then all the other stuff that you're interested in, make that 20%. So what I see a lot of people do is they spend a little bit of time on this, a little bit of time on that, a little bit of time on this, a little bit of time on this. You're not gonna none of those are gonna work if you're spread so thin, right? What you need to do is you need to spend 80% of your time on one thing, and then spend all those other time in the last 20% of the time, spend all those other things that you care about, and do that, right? And that's kind of like what I do. Like, I didn't start Night Owl Nation until, like, I started making content on the side and teaching something on the side and things like that while I was still running my agency, and 80% of my time was going into my agency. But now, one of my side hustle, Night Owl Nation, that's where I'm spending 80% of my time right now. So, and all the other stuff that I'm interested in, I'm only spending 20% of my time. And eventually maybe that'll flip or something like that. But yeah, like, it's kind of like the 80-20 rule. Thank you, everyone. So I just want to remind all of you, the new quarter of Night Owl Nation starts on Sunday. So if you haven't joined yet, and all of like most of the questions that you guys are asking, a lot of them you're going to be able to get the answer to within Night Owl Nation. So Night Owl Nation is where we learn, we practice storytelling. We have an amazing community of leaders, storytellers that can help you. A big difference in Night Owl Nation is, how when you take a course, you take an online course and you're like try to do the storytelling, and then you kind of get stuck and you have a question, but you can't ask anyone, right? You're like, oh, I'm kind of stuck, but you can't, there's nobody to really ask. Maybe there's a Facebook forum or something like that. Within Night Owl Nation, we have groups and we have a real community, and we actually meet live. So whatever you're struggling with, there's going to be somebody in the community that's going to help you directly and answer your questions and guide you directly. So definitely, it's unlike any other, like, everything that I say about online courses that I hate, like, this Night Owl Nation is what fixes that. So it's definitely unlike any other course out there. So definitely join. It starts Sunday. It's going to last 3 months. And I have 11 different storytelling exercises that you can do for the next 11 weeks. So hopefully I'll see you there. See you guys next week. Cheers, y'all. Bye.